Welcome to High School Backups Podcast. My name is Nick. This is episode 57. I'm the one who titled it, so God hopes I know. Welcome to our episode today. We are happy to have you here along with us as we dive headfirst into year 2 of what is this podcast. We're a few weeks in now. Dude, I don't know, man.
Mhm.
What were you trying to say?
We have a
happened?
shortened crew today.
Mhm.
There's just the 4 of us, as others have other responsibilities, other things they need to do. So we'll be having a little bit of fun with this episode. There's really not a ton going on in the sports world that we haven't already talked about. Things like March Madness are a few rounds deeper, so we'll be talking about that. But in terms of the main 3
What were you
sports, really
trying to
just coming
say?
down to. Oh, this would be helpful if I muted the podcast on my actual. That'd be helpful. So people aren't double hearing it. So for the main 3 sports, NFL, really not much happened off-season wise. However, we are going to do something fun as long as we have time, which we should. And then NBA and NHL wise, both are just coming down to the end of the season. There's a little bit to talk about, but really most of those talks will be pushed for the next, maybe in 2 weeks and so on. There'll be 2 or 3 weeks will be heavily those as we do brackets and so on. So it's a pretty light week for us here. So let's talk about the main thing that is going on. So March Madness over the weekend had both the Sweet 16 round and the Elite 8. Now, I would like to talk about first the thing that surprised me most about all of this. This is the first time ever that there is not a single 1 seed in the Elite 8s in the whole March Madness history. And there was only a single 2 seed in the Elite 8, which is also a first time ever that there was only one of those. Furthermore, in the Final Four, it was the first time ever there was neither a 1 or a 2 seed in the Final Four going into this weekend. Another thing, no offense, I wish Texas lost simply because it would have been really cool to see 0 top 1 or 2 seed teams in the Elite 8.
Well, Texas did. Oh, you mean going into the Elite Eight? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I want them to lose before the Elite 8, so it'd be only,
Fair.
there is left in the Final Four. There is a 4 seed, there is a 5 seed, there is a 9 seed, and then
another 5 seed.
Another 5 seed. Thank you.
Yep.
It's UConn, San Diego State,
Miami.
FAU, and Miami. Yeah.
Yep.
Miami has the least odds to win the championship. Does that surprise anyone?
That's
It doesn't surprise
yes
me because
and
of who they have to play. That's why it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I guess that
Who
makes
do
sense.
they have to play?
UConn.
Ooh, yeah, give it to UConn.
I mean, look, I think if we get rid of all hometown bias here, I think we're all on the same page that FAU winning is the best possible scenario. Because Austin doesn't win. Austin doesn't win the bracket this year. We win the bracket.
I still win.
You don't though, because we all win because we had the best bracket. So
No, FAU winning is not the best case scenario.
What's best case scenario, Kyle?
Honestly,
would have been
UConn
Oro
winning. To be honest,
Who?
UConn winning is
Why
best
is that
case
best
scenario.
case scenario?
It's better when the good teams win. It's fun when you can see all of these little teams go far into the tournament.
Teams. FAU has beat multiple good teams.
Yes, but they still are a little school. They're a mid-major.
What I will say is
same as San Diego State.
I'd love to go back and see when the last quote unquote little school won.
Won what? Like
a national championship. Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd have to go and look.
Was it UConn?
Let's find out.
How are you calling UConn a little school?
No,
but they were an 8 seed when they won, or a 7 seed, or whatever.
That's not what he's talking about.
I'm talking about mid-major, non-power conferences.
Which is
FAU,
the power conferences in basketball are Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC, Pac-12, and Big East. Those are the power.
There's a power 6 in basketball. Yeah,
there's a power.
Maybe never is the answer there.
The last time that I can think of off the top of my head is probably Loyola Chicago in the 60s, I think it was.
Jeez.
But I don't know the last time one of those mid-major schools actually won it. It's been a while.
Look, I think what do you mean it's better when good teams win, Kyle? If a team wins, if FAU were to win, you can't say they're not a good team because
no. I don't mean obviously they're the best team and they won. I'm saying that they obviously
they're not the best team. No. Let's not get that.
Okay, but they're the best team to win is what I'm. But I personally like it when blue blood schools win. I think it's better for just how when Georgia
Foreshadowing.
blew out. Fair. Just like when TCU got blown out by Georgia, everyone said it was better for this. It would have been better for the sport if TCU didn't get blown out. I'm saying it's the same exact situation here. I think it's better for the sport when a blue blood wins the championship. Last year in the Final Four, all Final Four were blue bloods, and it was some of the two of the best Final Four games we have ever seen. We got UNC Duke in the matchup, which was Coach K's last game ever, and then we had Kansas Villanova, which wasn't as exciting, but still went down pretty much the wire. Like those type of matchups is what makes the end of March amazing. Like the beginning of March is fun. You have all these upsets. No one can ever no one would have predicted Princeton to go far as they did, or FAU to go as far as they did. Yet,
hey, there are 7 or 8 brackets that correctly predicted the Final Four.
There's actually a decent amount,
which is nuts.
It's not just one. Like it's like 7 brackets. Regardless, like, they probably weren't even close on all the other rounds. Like 7 brackets predicted these Final Four, which is crazy.
Here's what I think. I think it's good for the sport if FAU and SD and San Diego State have a good Final Four matchup. Because if it's a good game, like I'm not saying I'm saying a good game where it's not like just a bunch of crappy play and there's turnovers and everything's just like they both suck that game and so it becomes a close game. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like good offense, good defense. We see good play across both sides. They're scrambling for balls. They're trying everything, which I think we're going to get. And if you get that kind of a game, then it's an all-time great game. And it's awesome because one of those two schools is going to go to the Final Four. And I mean, the championship. San Diego State has been there before, so it's not, obviously they're not a blue blood, but out of the mid-major conferences, they're one of those teams that's been there before. They've been to Final Four. So, actually, I don't know if they've actually been in the championship. I know they've been to a Final Four, but either way, FAU has obviously never been even this far, so that's really cool for them.
This is Miami's first one too,
and
this is also Miami's
Final Four as well. So honestly, anyone other than UConn winning is best case scenario for me. Again, I was a UConn fan growing up, so I'm still like kind of a UConn fan. 'Cause the only team that's worth shit in like most of college sports
the Northeast,
which is fine. But at the end of the day, like I think it was more. I'm not big enough fan where I don't think it'd be fun if a team who's never won wins. Like that's way more fun to me.
Obviously, I can't claim that I care about them more. Honestly, I would say I probably care about that. I also care about college basketball a little more than the NBA, so that's probably why. But I care about them more than like the Celtics. For me, so if they lose, I'll be very sad and I won't want to watch the last game.
So really quick, sorry, finish before you.
No, I was just saying that either way, I don't agree with you on that, Kyle. That it's better for the sport. There's a lot of people like, oh, it's bad for the sport when there's no quote unquote blue bloods, which we're gonna get into in a minute, in the Final Four and all this stuff. And I'm going, I don't think that's bad for the sport because that gives all those mid-major teams a reason to want to stay around through the rest. Now, obviously, those college teams are going to, but if you're a college basketball fan and you like the tournament, you should want to watch all the way through. Which I would do anyways, obviously, even if UConn did lose, or even if they had gone out in the first one that they did last year. So, for me, it's more about like, do we just get good games? And I think San Diego State and I think FAU are a lot better than people understood, which is why they're where they are. I thought they were good. I thought San Diego State was good. I just didn't think Alabama would lose them. That's pretty much only because their freaking best player, who was up until that moment being talked about, Scoot Henderson for the NBA, had literally, I think, the statistically worst basketball performance in a March Madness for a team that went as far as they did and a guy who was their number one player. Like, he shot like 18%, I think, either from the floor. It was stupid. It definitely from three, and he's a 3-point shooter, shooting like almost 40%. So he came up at small every game, and if it wasn't for his teammates, neither one of you made it to the Sweet 16. So yeah, I just think it won't be bad if we get good games. It's only bad if they both suck.
So like I did find the answer to your question also that I'll get into you in a second about the last time I mid-major won. So I'll get to that in a second. But first, like when my favorite school to root for in college basketball is St. John's, and I always found it where like when they're not in it, I always like seeing the success of the conference prevail too, in a sense, because seeing that they played good competition all year round. I don't feel as bad. So that's personally, especially for the blue blood conferences in a sense, the Power Six. Like, it's always important, not as important, I guess, but like it's always looked upon like, oh, we want to be able to say we played good competition all season long. And when you get those teams that obviously don't make it to the Final Four and not played, it's not necessarily that it's bad, but like as far as I'm looking at it, it's just not. To me, it's not as exciting. How like you all, not everyone, but some people on the podcast said that about the college football playoff when that happened. But to answer your question, Austin, the last time a mid-major won was in 1990, and it was UNLV over
Oh
Duke.
yeah, that's right.
When
We're
UNLV
Duke.
when UNLV was in the Big West.
Yep, that's
So,
right.
What?
They had
Uh,
who did they have then? I'm trying to remember who
What
was
was it?
playing
What
at
were
that.
they seed wise?
It
Let's
should
find
say it
out.
right there.
It doesn't on Wikipedia, but
Oh, that's funny.
so I'll have to look it up.
I think
Their head coach was Jerry Tarkanainen, if that means anything.
Watch that be like historical all time. Like, oh, it's just some random guy.
They were
UNLV was a 1 seed that year.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought they were really high. 'Cause they were really
So they were
That's
really high.
less fun for me, regardless of conference.
The last time a mid-major team won was in before that was 1966.
Yep.
It was Texas Western, which makes history because that was the first all-black 5 team to play on the basketball court.
Wow.
And they won the tournament that year. Now that was before
66. You said Texas Western?
Yes, that was the
I
name
have
of the school.
UTEP.
Yeah, that's what they changed it to.
Oh, okay.
They became University of Texas at El Paso later on, but at the time they won, they were known as Texas Western.
Gotcha.
That was also before this tournament was the big one. At the time, the NIT tournament was the main tournament. So that kind of switched like in the 80s, but that's besides the point. So between 1966 and 1990, there was only 2 mid-majors to win, and then from 1990 on, there have been 0.
Well, Kyle, I hate to tell you this to make you feel old, just like we all should. 1966 is closer to 1990 than 1990 is to today. So just around the same.
Yeah, sadly.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
That is actually really wild to think about.
33 years compared to 24. So just so you made 96 or 66 seem like it was forever ago.
Well, it is really from now. Like 1966 to now is forever ago, but like from 1990, I guess it's not.
Anyways,
you think
that
about
was my
it.
only joke I wanted to put out there. So, anywho, yeah. So in terms of, we kind of want to talk about that just a bit. Personally, I was always like I wanted TCU to win just because I wanted the lower schools to win. If anything, I do agree that those larger schools not being in it may cause less watchers from those schools, of course. But it does for sure increase the amount of people who have no interest in those larger schools winning. Because what will happen commonly is those larger schools will have tons of fans. But if a team sees Georgia versus Ohio State or whatever, or Georgia versus Alabama, they're not going to watch that just for fun. They're just going to watch it if they're a football fan. And in basketball, if you have Kansas versus Duke or Kansas versus UNC or however you want to place it, they're going to watch if they're a fan of basketball, but not just in general. Whereas if you have a team that's like a super big surprise to be there, you'll have people who are not basketball fans or not college basketball fans or not fans of in general that will want to watch it because they want to see the upset. They want to see that team do it.
Yep.
When that base is significantly larger than the fan base of those lone schools alone. So that's generally how I feel about it.
I mean, the other thing, too, you think about it, I mean, when it comes to, like, media coverage for a specific game, they love a good story. So what better for basketball in general just for this kind of Cinderella story? And the thing is, it's not like this is going to be every year going forward that some nobody team is going to beat out the top seeds. I mean, there's going to be upsets here and there. This could just be an off year every other year. Something like that could happen. But I think it's kind of nice to take advantage of, this kind of Cinderella matchup. I was excited when TCU, for college football was making such a huge push. Granted, they got demolished in the end, but still, I love.
It was a little close, you know. Like it was
Mm.
okay.
It was not close.
I thought
It's
it
like
was
what?
close.
I mean, like they're only down what, like 50, like what,
It
like
wasn't
58
They lost by like
points.
14 or 20 or something.
No, they got blown out.
I'm pretty sure.
65 to 7,
No,
right?
it was not close. It was not close.
TCU
it was
to
like
Georgia.
it was
Nick?
like
It was
50
yeah.
to like 14.
TCU versus Georgia, because I don't remember. I thought it was.
It was not close. I thought he was
Oh, it
joking.
65
Yeah, I
to
did
7.
too.
I thought it was,
It
like
was 65 to
40
7,
I thought it was
yeah.
like 48-21, but okay, fair enough.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, so
point being, I think that those games are more fun. And so, for instance, I have not really watched March. I haven't sat down and watched it. If it's been on, I've watched it. But if like FAU makes it, if it's like FAU versus probably
UConn would be the
Miami,
good. I think it'd be better to have UConn versus FAU if we're talking about like storylines, like Steve was saying, because then you have like and we're gonna get into this in a second, the blue blood that's left, who has 4 championships already, versus the little, David versus Goliath kind of thing at that point. If it's Miami, it's not really a Goliath versus David. It is a little bit, but not really, because that's also their first one. So it's like, it's not really that much. Miami's not very much known as a, basketball school. They're usually pretty good and they usually make it to the tournament, but they just don't usually do much, obviously. So I think
Yeah.
it's best for the sport if it's like FAU, even if it's San Diego State, because I don't remember if they have one or not. Kyle, can you check that also? See if they won, because I know
San Diego State has not won.
Okay, so the only one who has one, that's what I thought. Oh, I do remember seeing that statistic that UConn had 4 and nobody else did. So, anyways, no matter who gets there from the other side, it'll still be that way. But FAU would be the big one.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I just think it'd be so. Even if it's San Diego State versus Miami, it's not that I don't want UConn to win. Like, that's a great consolation prize. At the end of the day, I feel like no matter what, like us as New Englanders are happy here because either UConn's gonna win and we're happy that UConn won, or a team that's never won before won, and we got to see a team who never won before win in a tournament that might be considered one of the most like stacked ones ever. Like, this is like a hard tournament to win. So, that's. Like,
I
a
will
super
also.
interesting thing.
I will also say that it is impressive what FAU has done because this is also they have their first tournament win ever
This year.
This year. So like the fact that I don't know if this was their first tournament ever, but it was, I know, their first tournament win. I don't remember if it was their first one ever or not.
I don't think it was their first appearance, but
Yeah, I don't know that one for sure, but like first tournament win ever, and they've been able to get this far. That is impressive. Even though I am rooting for the blue blood in UConn, it is impressive to me.
they
Yeah,
made it
but
in 2002. Kyle
Okay, so
was their second time, and now they went to the Final Four, which is still really impressive.
that is impressive.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
do you want to?
I didn't. I would go ahead, Austin. I'll let you because this is.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, did you want to move into like the blue blood stuff? We can kind of transition into that, but
Yeah, I mean,
finish
we
out what
talked
you were
about it a
gonna
little
say.
bit, but yeah, we could talk about it more because I know the main topic is just who is a blue blood, who isn't, right? Like that's the
Yes,
main
which
conversation.
Does anybody here disagree with us, like Jake would, or does anybody want to play the devil's advocate? I guess.
I'll play the devil's advocate.
I don't know
Just-
enough to be an
Yeah,
advocate. Not yet.
I will go. I'm gonna go on the record. I don't agree with what I am about to say, but I am gonna play devil's advocate just for the.
Kyle,
sake
you
of
should say that before you have any sports opinion.
I think it's a good idea. Go ahead, Austin. I know you want to spearhead this.
I guess so. It is. You have to be as. Oh, bye, Steve.
I see.
Kyle, you have to be about as aggressive as you've ever been in this, because it seems like
I'll be as
like,
aggressive. as-
Jake wanted to be that, and I needed that
Steve,
out.
what even
But
happened? Nothing. We didn't do anything, so I don't know what happened.
No, Kyle kicked me.
Yeah, I did.
No
Kyle.
doing this, Kyle.
I had to. I'm sorry. I
Not made
couldn't, let that,
podcast, Kyle.
I couldn't let that stand. I'm sorry.
Wait, should we just get actually, we'll kick Kyle after this segment because I need him. Anyways,
I'll be
For those-
as aggressive as I can. So.
for those basketball fans out there, especially college basketball, obviously, now that there has a quote unquote not been a blue blood in the Final Four, not for the first time ever, but for the first time in a little while, and obviously first time in did we have a blue? We did have blue bloods in the lead, I think, right?
No. No, there's
It
no
depends
more
who you
teams.
want to. It depends who you.
No, no,
If
ask.
you wanna
that's not what a
include
blue blood
Texas,
is.
if you want to, yeah, but I'm saying like
Texas-
the best teams. If you
no.
wanna include Texas.
I'm trying to think.
Depends
who
who
was
you
it?
ask, but consensus is no, Austin.
I was just trying to remember who was in the Elite Eight. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was
Gonzaga, UConn,
Was it
Texas.
Gonzaga one?
That's why I'm saying depends who you
K-State.
ask.
Yeah, you're right. No, there were
No
weren't.
blue bloods. No.
Nope.
The consensus is no blue bloods.
So for those who don't know, the blue bloods that pretty much everybody or most people agree on, and you'll hear from like sports networks and stuff, is going to be Indiana, UCLA, UNC, Duke, Kansas, and some put Villanova in there. Not everybody does.
Did you
but
say Kentucky?
in Kentucky, thank you. That's the other one.
Gotcha.
So Villanova's kind of like the one that's like a lot of times accepted, but also not always accepted in that. It's kind of interesting. So that you can kind of put them like basically in there, but not exactly. No one ever mentions UConn. And I think at this point they have to, especially if UConn wins the 5th championship, they have to, because they will actually be second all time in championships behind UCLA. And UCLA has 11. So, and then Duke is second, I believe, with their
No, second is Kentucky at 8.
Oh, that's right, Kentucky. Oh, then North Carolina's at 6. So they
Yes.
wouldn't be. They'd be tied for 4th with Duke and Indiana. So never mind.
Yes.
But what I will say about that is that we're talking. Let me quickly go over like some of Kansas stuff, right? So Kansas, as one of the, they might actually have the most all-time wins. I'm not sure. I don't remember who's got the most, but they have 2,300, almost 2,400 now. And they have obviously a ton of titles. Well, not a ton of titles. They only have 4. But still really good. Obviously, they have a ton of appearances. They're almost always in the tournament. All right, we know why they're a blue blood. But we're gonna get into a second as to why UConn should be if we're going off of these teams as blue bloods. Obviously, UNC has 6. For me, the big thing is that there's only a few teams that actually have all of their titles after the expansions. So the first expansion happened in 1906. Originally, it was 8 teams in the 40s, 50s, whenever they started out. I think the first one was in 1930 something. Is the NCAA tournament, not the NIT. The NIT obviously started first. That was the first one, and I think that actually started in New York, I believe, and so did the NCAA tournament. Anyways, and then I think it was either the 50s or the 60s, they went to 16 teams. And then 75, they went to 32. And then in 85? Yeah, 85, they went to the normal format of 64 teams, which is now technically 68. But anyways, my problem is that most of those blue bloods, like Indiana and those other ones, most of their titles came before they even went to the third 32 field. So like UCLA got their tournament, most of them in the 60s to 70s before they even went to 32. Only a couple, I think 3 of them actually, or 2 of them came from 75 to 95. 95 is the last time UCLA even won a title. And we're over here and they're the de facto, blue blood. But you won it when there used to be 16 teams. Like, not that that's not impressive, but 16 teams is a lot easier to get through as a number 1 seed or any seed than it is to get through a round of 64 or a field of 64. You have an extra couple of games, and there's so much more parity at that. So that's my problem with that, considering UConn has all 4, perhaps 5 after this. Since the 90s, when basketball has evolved a lot more, now 3-point shot. Plus, you got to talk about all that stuff too. No 3-point shot, no shot clock, all that stuff in those early games. What, in the 70s? When did they added the shot clock? What, they added it after Jim Valvano's great win over the Phi Slamma Jamma Houston. So that was that was before the expansion, I think. So that was in the late 70s, early 80s.
1954.
What, shot clock?
Yes.
That's not when they added that.
When I just looked it up.
When did Jim Valvano win his?
I don't
That was
know.
in the 70s.
That's what Google says. 1954 shot clock.
Yeah, the NBA or the NCAA, 'cause that's different.
NBA, I guess. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when did NCAA
All right.
put it in? Because that's
Ah,
because they
fair
put it
enough.
in.
1986.
Thank you. I was like, I know they did not have it in that early. Okay, so
Fair
that makes more
enough.
sense. So that's the whole point. Is like they didn't have a shot clock. They didn't have 3-point shot yet. All that stuff like in the 60s and 70s for the NCAA. So actually, I think the 3-point shot came in somewhere around there. But that's my point. Is like there's a lot of that stuff. So when you look at Duke, right? Duke is the one that I think if we're gonna, we call them a blue blood, and I think they are a blue. They got all their championships
They're actually
after
a Blue Devil.
after 1991 and on. I hate you. So I think they're obviously blue blood. Kansas is a blue blood. UConn has 4 titles from 1999 to 2014. They're obviously in the Final Four this year and have a chance at another one. They've had 6 Final Fours now, all from 99 on. And they've had quite a few tournament appearances, and their all-time record of wins is 1,700 wins, which is comparable to a lot of these different teams. Like Duke has 2,200. Kansas has 2,300. North Carolina has 2,300. Right, so they've been better for a little longer. But if you go to like UCLA and other ones, they're actually really close or about the same as them, like 1,800, 1,900. So that's my problem. Is that you have to, I think, at this point consider. And Seth Greenberg said it on ESPN, and I do with him that at this point you can't not say that UConn is a blue blood school. Especially being a founding member of the Big East, which was for a long time the top of the conferences, if not, competing for it every year. So go ahead, Kyle, see if you can rebuttal that.
Well, I wasn't quite prepared to go this early. Okay.
You're prepared?
Sometimes. I'm prepared sometimes, Steve. The biggest
Shocking.
argument that I would have for you, Austin, is while you and I consider the Big East to be a power conference, many other people do not. A lot of other people consider the same Power 5 that exists in football to be the same Power 5 that exists in basketball. So just to reiterate, that is the Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC, and Pac-12. Just so everyone's on the same page. When you're looking at success that UConn has done, they have largely done their success in a conference that isn't considered a Power 5 conference. Meaning they have been dominant in that conference in the past 20-something years. What did you say? Since 96, was it?
Since really 99 is the first time they won the title. I don't know when their first, okay. Yeah, so just go for
99. Just sticking for that. So, while UConn has been dominant since that time frame, that largely puts them in the league on their own. Now, you looked at Duke. Duke has roughly same time span, but they play in a Power 5 conference. So they're playing tougher competition regularly. They're able to get better recruits aside from Kemba Walker. Wow.
Walker.
Heavy accent just came out there. Aside from Kemba Walker, really, when he won with UConn.
You're really disrespecting a lot of those guys. Ray Allen?
Fair enough. I actually forgot Ray Allen went to UConn, to be honest.
Oof.
Rudy Gay?
Forgot about that. But anyway, like Duke has been able to play in a Power 5 conference, recruit top 10 talent every single year. And while it's been in the same time frame, that puts UConn in kind of a league of their own because they have had the same amount of success as just not in a top conference. Now, that is what the general consensus is onto why UConn is not considered a blue blood. Take into account also the storied championships and history that come with every other school, aside from Duke. Duke is really like the outlier here. So you take into account every other school, they come with all of their success, all of their storied history from when basketball was founded. UCLA brings it, Kansas brings it, Kentucky brings it, even North Carolina brings it. So when you bring these, and Indiana, of course, I can't forget it. So like when you bring,
they're kind of forgettable at this point.
Indiana hasn't really been relevant for a while, unfortunately, but like their history exists. Like you can't ignore it. Like they have, what do we say, 8 championships? 6.
They only have 5 championships.
Okay, but they have a lot of Final Four appearances, which I'll get to in a second.
Not that many. A decent amount. Not. They only
Yeah,
have 1,
10?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8. They have 8. All right.
They have
fair
2 more
enough.
than UConn. Just to be fair.
But anyway,
Again,
the point I'm
One
saying.
of those, all I'm gonna say is one of those is in the 40s when there was 8 teams. So you won 1 game. That does not count. I hate. There's also they count. Sorry about that, but quickly cut you off. They count Sweet 16s for some of these teams
No,
when
I
the
hate
field was
that.
16.
I
That
hate
does
that.
not count. You made it to the tournament. That's not a Sweet 16. Anyways, keep going.
So like that's really my argument for UConn here is they have success, done so the same amount of time. They're just doing so at a not as strong conference. Now, that is vastly changing because the Big East, as we saw this year's tournament, is competitive. They had three or four.
They had 4
Four in the
games.
Sweet 16, 3 in the Sweet 16.
3.
Three school, which was the most of any conference.
I think it was tied actually. I think the SEC did.
In the Sweet 16?
Yeah, they had Tennessee. They had.
Oh, valid, actually. Fair enough. So that's basically my argument for UConn here is they just don't play. Their big detriment is they don't play in a big conference. It definitely hurts them too when they went to the American. That
was a big
even
thing.
more hurt them when the Big East made them leave.
So I did more research on that, and this is my rebuttal to you on this, and then we're pretty much wrapped up on this. But one, the Big East, while yes, there are some that would see it that way. For the most part, in college basketball, it is seen as Power 6 conference. It's not, especially. It took a little bit of a hit for a little while and there were people saying, "Is it really a Power 6 anymore?" When the whole Big East thing happened, and that all happened because there were a lot of schools that wanted to keep doing basketball and football. And the schools that became the new Big East, all these Catholic schools like Villanova, that was already in it, but they didn't. I don't remember if they were, but anyways,
They were in it.
I was gonna say I thought they were. Anyways, they wanted to just do basketball only, and so that's where the split happened because UConn was one of the founding members, along with was Syracuse and some others. And when they were founded, it's not important. From when it was a little from the 80s, probably, I would say, all the way up to 2013 when it disbanded into the 2 different conferences, which the American Athletic Conference actually was the legal survivor.
1979, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, 1980s. So the American Conference was the actual legal survivor of the original Big East. Like that's technically what the Big East is now, the old Big East at least, and then the other one kept the name. But that old Big East was always considered a Power 6, and even in football at that point, it was actually considered a Power 6. There used to be a Power 6 conference even because you had Syracuse, you had Boston College, or what was it, BU or BC that was the big football school back then? BC, yeah. So BC was still in it. Syracuse was big. UConn was decent in football at that time. Who else was in it?
Actually, that I was just gonna ask you. Can you name the 11 founders of the Big East?
Oh God, I feel like was Louisville a founder?
No.
Okay, so it's UConn, it's BC.
Yes and yes.
Syracuse.
Yes.
I got 3. Villanova wasn't. They came in later.
Yeah. So you were counting them as later, but the article I'm looking at was not counting them as later. It's complicated.
Oh, okay. So
Villanova counts. Yes.
Villanova, Villanova, BC, UConn, Syracuse, Georgetown.
Yes.
What I got 5.
Yep.
I need 11. 96 more. Gosh dang. I gotta think about all these teams that used to be in it. Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Cincinnati?
What'd you say?
Cincinnati, or did they come later?
No, Cincinnati was not a founder.
I'm not even sure if we're gonna get the other 5.
You're missing 3 big ones.
What am I missing? St. John's.
Yeah.
Is there another New York school in there?
No. Well, no. Not New York.
I don't know. I'm gonna get the other 4 that I know I'm gonna be mad when I don't think of these other ones. But go ahead and just tell me.
Providence.
Okay, Providence. Well, yeah, that makes. I always said them, but I didn't think they were. Right,
Georgetown, Syracuse,
Yeah.
Seton Hall,
Oh, does Seton Hall?
UConn.
I said UConn.
I know. I'm listing
Oh,
them all.
okay.
Boston College, Villanova, Pittsburgh, Holy Cross,
Oh my
and-
gosh, I forgot about them.
and Rutgers.
Well, Holy Cross wasn't even in there at the end. I don't think were they? I
No,
don't think
they had
had
left.
Yeah,
They
so
left
that's why I'm
way
not gonna-
before ago. But
Rutgers, I forgot was even in the Big East. I forgot about
They
that because
were.
I've always thought for some reason they were in Big Ten because it's been so long now, but it's been 10 years. Anyways,
yeah,
so
I was
back
like,
to
it
my
hasn't
point,
been that long.
But well,
yeah.
okay, 10 years is still pretty long when you're only 25. Anyways,
Fair enough.
Point is back to just the Blue Bloods, and we'll wrap this up. You know, it used to be that there was Power Six across all sports. Then the Big East disbanded, and now we have the Power Six in basketball again. And I think most people now would consider with UConn coming back and them adding and potentially adding more teams, the Big East is finally back fully. Villanova did hold it down for everybody.
Yeah.
They went out there and won championships and held down for the Big East. So for people to consider Nova like a blue blood, but not consider UConn, in my opinion, when they were both founding members of the Big East, part of that big Power Six conference, and then be like, oh, well, you know, they like when I hear that, I'm just like, are you dumb? You can't put that one in the conversation. Villanova has less titles than UConn does too. So
One less.
what? It could be
I
two
know,
less.
it's still less.
Either way, it's still less, and that's the point. Is I don't understand that, and it's dumb. Anyways, I think I'm right, and if
To
they
be
win,
fair,
if
as
they
I
win
said-
5, how are you going to deny them?
you shouldn't. To be fair,
5
I also
in what, 25 years?
I
That's a lot.
also include. I personally look at more the Final Four appearance aspect than just the championship aspect.
I agree with
There's also more schools that I would include in it as well. Like I include Ohio State, Michigan State, and Louisville. Personally,
it's hard for me to
me.
include some of those teams. Like I looked at Michigan State, and they, you know, they're close. I think they need to win. I think they only have 2 championships.
But to me, the
or no,
way
actually, I
I'm
think they
looking
only
at
have
it
one.
is championships isn't really what I'm not looking solely at championships. I'm
I'm not
at,
looking at it solely either. But if you don't have 2, it's hard for me to put you in the conversation of a blue blood. I think you should have multiple, and then we can start talking about you. But
So before we fully move on from blue bloods, we argued what a blue blood is and if a school should be. Let's continue that conversation going down the line a little bit. Should Gonzaga be?
wait. Let's quickly I just want to ask these 2 guys, Nick
Yeah.
and Steve. Do you guys think UConn is, or should it be, or if they win 5, should they definitely?
I don't know. If I'm being honest, like I feel like the whole idea of Blue Bloods is history and their ability, and UConn's history is so short, right, in the grand scheme of things. 24
So is
years
Duke's.
since they've started winning.
Mhm.
To be fair, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is if we're considering Duke, do you consider Duke to be a blue?
How many championships does Duke won in the?
They have
time frame?
5. They have
Mhm.
5, but they've only won them since the early 90s, 91, 92, and then
What's 10 more
on.
years, right? Like that's 10 more years on top. of
9.
UConn's
It's
first.
your 8 years if you're really being, 8 years more.
Like, that's
Does
like-
that really make that much of a difference?
A little bit, because in some fashion, like I look at it for UConn, I'm like, okay, like I still feel like they're like a fresh new team in terms of being really good, and all those other teams I feel like are very like old, like they've been winning for a long time. I know it's only 8-year difference for Duke, and for the other teams it's a lot more than that.
Okay, so what about like in Indiana that
Well, that's the
hasn't
opposite
won
reason,
even won
right?
since '87?
Yeah, so they won a lot early and they have won then. But Blue Bloods isn't a tangible thing, right? It is simply an idea that there are teams that are known as the winners, right? Those are the teams that are the best of the best in the history of the NCAA or whatever, right? The tournament. That's like the whole point of the Blue Bloods, right? And for me,
So then,
that the history matters more than where they are right now. And although I think that UConn needs a little bit more time, I think if you have the same conversation in 5 or 10 years, it's like a lock, regardless if UConn wins anymore in the next 5 or 10 years. I just think that it still feels fresh, right? Like it still feels fresh enough. This century they've won 4 of those, or they've won 3 of those 4. Like this, and since 2000. It doesn't feel like 2000 was that long ago, which is why I think people struggle with the idea of Blue Bloods. It doesn't feel like they have a historic history. It doesn't feel like they have a historic history of winning. It feels like they have a recency of winning, and that's.
I
where
think
it's
that's my problem too with like Kansas, right? Like people are like, oh yeah, Kansas Kansas has 2 of their 4 this century. They have won the 50s, which nobody cares about, unless you're a Kansas fan, which most of us know. Most of the fans out now were never even alive for that. And they won in '88, and then it was 2008 and 2022 last year. Like, if you take out last year, UConn had more championships. Well, they still have, or no, now they're tied. But you got last year, they had more. UConn had more championships and had more in this time period than Kansas. So like that's my problem is like some of those things were like, yeah, well these are, long history, all this other stuff. And it's like, well, one, either they had long history where they didn't win now for 30 years, 40 years, whatever it's been. Like Indiana's been to how many Final Fours since they last won? They won in 87, and then they've been to 2 Final Fours since then.
That's a hard argument. I'm gonna bring in an NFL reference here. Do you
Mhm.
consider the Steelers, if you were to say like an NFL blue, would you consider the Steelers an NFL blue blood team?
Yes.
Yes.
See, like
They
I
did
would
not
say
win
yes
for,
and
like,
no.
20 years. They did
Yeah.
not win from the early 80s until 2005. But
And then
they've
also
won
you-
2 since then. They won 2005 and they won 2010 or whatever the hell it
8,
was.
Yeah,
9.
11.
Yeah, it was
Then, like-
somewhere in that time frame. So if you're looking at, okay, well, but they won a lot back then. Like they won a lot back then. And I know we're also talking on a larger scale where there's more teams and so on and so forth. There's a lot
Mhm.
less likelihood to win in basketball
Yep.
compared to. That's like the same argument in my mind. So I get
Well,
your
I think-
point, but it's like the same thing.
I think part of my point with that would be like, okay, well, look at the Steelers. Like they got 2 championships in our lifetime too, so that's big for them. Yeah, they didn't
Kansas
win
has
for
had
a
2
good period,
championships in our lifetime.
right? So I would consider Kansas what I consider Indiana. Not really anymore. I would say they're not now because they haven't done anything. And then on top of that, you say, okay, well,
But
I don't
it's an
think you
idea,
can
though.
lose. Hold on. I don't think once you gain blue blood
Yes.
status, you can't lose it.
I think that's the point. I think
What-
that's the
okay,
point I'm
what if-
trying to
what if-
make.
what if Indiana goes another 30 years without winning?
It doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter.
Every kid
they
that
have
grew
that
up
history.
for 50 years never saw any of that history and doesn't care.
Doesn't
Because,
matter.
But
What
if
about
they don't
the
make the
Cubs?
tournament for
Cubs
the last
that's the
championship.
thing. It's an idea. It's an idea.
Yeah.
You're saying that you're by saying schools of blue blood, you're saying that they are or have been winners. You're not saying they're winners right now, because if you're saying they're winners right now, then you could say there's a bunch of teams that have won in the last 10 years. That are blue bloods.
Gonzaga. If
That's
you're
not the
saying
point.
if you're saying that they're a winner right now, Gonzaga is 100% of blue blood.
Yeah, you're
Fair
saying
enough.
you're saying a history of winning over years and years and years. And yes, I'm not saying that UConn isn't. I'm saying that it's hard to fight for them because everything feels so recent in comparison. That's the issue. In 10 years, UConn's 100% a blue blood, whether they win again or not. They could not win this year, and they're going to be a blue blood because you're going to be like, oh, they won 4 times in the last in 20-year span. 30 years ago. Like that's exactly the conversation you're having about all these other schools. So I'm not saying they're
give
not
you-
now. I'm saying that
Yeah, I would say, and I'll let you go, Steve. I
Yeah.
would say for me, it's okay. You can't lose it. That's fine. I can agree with that. I can say you can't lose it. I would argue that you have to finally put UConn in that, especially if they win this year. If they win this year, to me, it's like you have to. Only for the fact is there's reasons. You could say there's recency bias. Fine. It feels like, oh yeah, they're only so recent, and that is fair. I would just argue that for like Villanova or Kansas, some of those. I don't remember Kentucky, all of Kentucky, stuff like that. UNC, even UNC, like there's a lot of those teams. Duke, same thing. All of those teams actually got most of their championships in the last same time period, pretty much as UConn. So for me, it's that as going, they didn't really have much winning back then, like Kansas especially. Kansas didn't really do all that much. Now they made a lot of tournaments, which has always been a big thing that people have put on Kansas. Like you make the tournament every year, and you might be a 1 seed every year, but you tend to choke. But like that's my problem is that like, okay, you've made the tournament a lot, but you didn't really win a lot. So are you really a blue blood at that point? But that's you're picking hairs at that
is
point.
it
I just think
making
you
the
need to start.
tournament or making Sweet 16, making Elite 8, making Final Four. Like, isn't that a part of like the winning culture? Like, you're
I
still
agree with that. I
winning
agree.
Anywhere
I agree there
from
needs to
1
be.
to 3 games, if not more, in a tournament of a very like the 16 seed nowadays can win. It's happened twice in the last 3 or 4 years. Like it can happen. So the 15 seed made it 3 rounds deep. Like that's crazy. Like the 9 seed is in the Final Four. Like the 9 seed wasn't supposed to statistically win the first round. It has been at a disadvantage every game it's played so far.
Except against whoever I forgot FDU. Except against FDU. Technically, they were favored in.
I didn't know. Well, but were they favorite? Like, were they a lower seed? I didn't know.
FDU was the 16 seed that won.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So technically,
yes.
Yeah. All right.
But, exactly. So go ahead, Steve.
I'll give my 2 cents. This is my kind of take on this. Who gives a fuck about blue blood status? All right, I'm gonna break this down.
I
right?
do.
Blue blood status. The idea of getting this BS status because of your historical relevancy. The only reason you look at college, what are some of the benefits to being a blue blood? Let's look at maybe recruitment for other players. Maybe get grants from the government, maybe for your school or some attention. You know what else helps that more nowadays? If your team is relevant, whether it be via social media, via winning, also your conference tends to, make a huge difference. We talked about Texas coming into, the Big 12 or Big 10 in terms of football.
SEC.
They're coming into the SEC.
SEC. So that will do more than help. So if you're a blue blood, the only reason it's going to matter is you may get some special treatment, which in today's age, that's not very popular nowadays, of that kind of nepotism title, fair treatment, which that's a whole nother scenario. But also it just becomes more of a meme because imagine if the NFL had blue blood teams. Are you kidding me? If the Dallas Cowboys are labeled a blue blood, that's another excuse just to basically push aside their mediocrity since the 90s because they've been
a blue blood team.
It would be a blue blood, but that would just make them more of a joke nowadays more than anything.
Patriots would not be.
Patriots wouldn't be.
Bring that up. Would the Patriots be? I feel like the Patriots of the NFL are what we're saying about UConn right now.
I agree.
Yes, 100%.
No,
I agree
Kyle.
Yes.
Your idea is correct, but it's a little different because
it's a little
the Patriots
extreme.
went from winning 0 Super Bowls to winning the most by any team in the history.
To being the best team in the
They're
AFC
tied.
for 20 years.
If
there's a big
UConn
difference
had,
there, Kyle.
7, 8, 9
No.
championships, like the
They'd have
most
to have 11.
ever? Okay, yeah, like that's just it's not comparable. I get it is. But
I
it's
think
not.
it is
Yeah.
comparable. It's not that big of a stretch. Like Steve is just trying to come down my throat for saying it's not that big of a stretch. Like in
Situations
theory,
are the
This
same.
time.
in theory, the situations are exactly the same. That's what I'm saying.
Now the
Yes.
question,
Yeah.
the question is, and I honestly, this is a whole other talk for another day. What is harder to win, March Madness or
Yes,
the
March
NFL, or,
Madness.
the
yes.
March.
I don't
I
think
actually
anything
think
is
it's significantly closer than you think because in the
I don't think it's like far off because they're all one game.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
I personally think March Madness is the hardest of any tournament to win.
I
But what
agree
were you going to say versus
actually,
what?
I disagree. I think that you could say either golf or tennis is harder to win.
I said tournament. I said full blown
Are
tournament.
you
Fine,
tennis
golf is
a
Team.
Tennis is a
Separate
tournament.
team. Separate
Yeah,
team and
Tennis is a
individual.
tournament.
Yeah.
Tennis is a tournament. So I agree, Nick. If you're doing individual, yes, golf and tennis are definitely some of the hardest to win. But if you're doing on a team, I don't think it's close.
And
To
the
be
World
honest,
Cup's the hardest to win.
I think March Madness is harder.
I don't think.
Here's
so.
the thing with March Madness. All right, when you look at, it's kind of hard to compare different championships together because when you go to the NFL, even though you still have some of the best teams there, there's still mediocrity that can make their way, and you still have very smart teams. And these are teams, when you are preparing for that kind of team, since there are fewer teams, it's a lot easier to prepare for what to come. If you're in March Madness, you're in a bracket of 16 teams in just your section that you have to worry about.
Yep.
So you, as a coach, you have to prepare for every scenario and also know that basketball, for the most part, is actually a much more grinding kind of game because it's
Then
just
what?
2 points and 2 points
Well,
and 3
okay,
points. And like football, because remember with football, even though it's physically very grinding, there are ways that
I
in
didn't
2
mean to start
series
this
you can be up.
No,
Yeah.
no, I
could be
like
an
this
hour.
argument.
This is a good
No,
argument.
This would be an
could
hour.
Be
This would
an
be an
hour. Like this could
No,
be
no,
a
but
whole
this is a
episode.
good argument.
We're gonna
I
talk
don't
The
about
moral of
have
the
a lot
story
stuff
is-
to talk about.
Hold on,
because-
hold on. Pause.
Yeah.
Wait, really quick. I do
Mm.
just want to say you can't really compare it to the World Cup because the World Cup isn't all single elimination. Like
That's
there
true.
was the entire group stage first.
Yeah.
Right, so
I just
it's
wanted to
I mean, it was
throw that
tough.
out
Like
there.
Kyle, like how tough was it for Italy to play this? Oh,
That was good, Steve.
and
Well,
with that,
oh, So the last thing that I would want to say to that
it's
is,
just it's
okay,
just
we're just
me
losing
and,
everybody.
it's just a me and Austin episode for the rest of
It's
the
just,
episode.
yeah, it's just.
It's just me and Austin for the rest of this episode. Anyways, fixing
No.
that.
It was supposed to just be me and him for the rest of the episode. But okay.
Yeah. Look,
No,
I
the
don't,
last thing
want
I'll
to
say
open
for
up
this
that
is
can
just-
of worms because every sport is different and there's different reasons why, especially nowadays with NIL and stuff like that. It's all kind of bullshit. So
Mhm.
Wait, hold on. I just want to say this. And then like for what you said, Nick, and I think we should actually talk about this, like maybe Jake on here, stuff like that, another podcast where we actually kind of talk more. But I think it's an interesting, cool topic. I think it is hardest. Like, and I have a little bias because this is my favorite tournament of all time. Like, I am addicted to this tournament. I watch every single game if I can. And that's probably just because of the bracket. But anyways, if you take all of that out, I think this is one of the hardest, if not the hardest, team sport to win when it comes to a tournament, just strictly on the fact that there are 6 games you have to win. There
Mhm.
are, as Steve said, there are technically 64, well, 68, but really 64 teams in the tournament field. And it's a win or go home situation where there is a lot of stuff that can go wrong. Obviously, I think there's more that can go wrong in this than there is in like maybe football and stuff like that, just because of how many times you have to shoot to score and things like that, and how many times you could just be off by a centimeter and it bounces out of the rim. So there's all that stuff. And then, as you were saying, like with all these teams in the field, there are teams that are very different in styles, very different in players and physicalities and different types of things. When you're talking about the NFL, although that's hard, when's the last time we actually saw a real underdog make it to Super Bowl
the
win?
Giants twice in 6 years.
Yeah,
Giants once
were
because the
definitely-
second Super Bowl, I think they were 12-4 that year. Actually,
They were still 6.
No, they were still
Oh.
like just over. But even then, like you could go back and look at their team and look at who they had in the team. It wasn't really an underdog. I mean, they didn't play well that season, probably mostly because of Eli. And Eli sucks in the regular season.
true.
He only goes
Like
God
Daniel
knows
Jones.
on random years, and when he knows he's going to face the Patriots that year, I think it was this NFL script. So, anyways, but like if we're really being honest, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Tom Brady, it's those teams that are going to probably make it that year, or like the Eagles last year. Like we all knew they were ridiculously good, and guess what? They made it there. So
Not everyone knew the Eagles were good at the beginning of the year.
no, I'm not saying like I'm saying by the end of the season, we
okay,
were.
okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's like when you
Okay.
went to the playoffs, you're like, yes, this is a team that should make it, and you look at the Chiefs and go, that's also a team that
last
should
one
make
was
it. You know?
Baltimore, by the way, in 2013. They were good that
Yeah,
season, but
you
they
could-
were not the favorites by any means.
Exactly. So I would say like, but I'm saying like, sometimes like 200 dogs like this FAU team, right? You're not going to see that, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying too. Where like, or
Yeah.
FBU, that kind of stuff. You're not going to see that. In
winning
there.
is pretty crazy. So and it happened.
It is crazy, but like,
We also have the Bucks as
So-
a 5 seed going up against.
Okay.
Well, I mean, forget the. Oh yeah, but that's a whole nother thing.
This
That's
is-
a whole nother
I
thing.
would like
We'll
to
say
talk
this for another
briefly
time.
about our matchups for
Yeah.
this weekend and who we want to win, not who we think's gonna win, because that's not fun. Because if we think who's gonna, we're probably gonna say UConn, and I don't know.
mine's not changing either way. So
Yeah, so I would like FAU to win, and I would like UConn to win. So I'd like FAU. to
I
win
agree with
versus
that.
San Diego State. I think that would be my ideal matchup, and I feel like I'm winning no matter who wins that finals game. So
yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm fine with that. I like the idea of the true Cinderella team.
I'm okay with it.
versus-
Like, I think any of these 4 teams, it's like a positive. Like anyone from New England probably agrees, unless they hate UConn for some weird reason.
I would agree with you. It'll just be a very hard pill to swallow if UConn blows this, because there is no reason. Like if we're all being honest, I think there's no reason that team shouldn't at this point win the
No
championship.
reason that Alabama should have lost. No reason that Houston should have lost. So
I
with it.
don't disagree with you on that. I know you're just salty about Houston.
I'm not really
let's
that
be-
salty, but I agree. There's really no reason that those teams should have lost. Like they were playing.
All I'll
football.
say about Houston is Houston did not play well at all in the tournament. They almost lost in the 16 seed themselves. So they didn't really play well.
No, that's a bit of a stretch.
No,
That-
it's not.
they ha-
That
yes,
was a
it is.
very, It was a much closer game than it should have been. They
Yeah,
should
in
have
the
blown it up
first
by
half.
30.
That happens all the time, though. 16 seeds can be competitive in the.
You
in
see the
first
final
half.
score. It wasn't like a 20-point game.
Yeah, what was it?
Uh-uh.
I'm pulling it up right now.
I'm pretty sure it was under 20.
63 to 52, so they're up by 11.
Thank you. This was a close game all the way.
Okay.
That should
Anyways,
not have been.
does anyone disagree with the FAU and UConn winning? Like
Yes.
that feels like
I do.
okay. What
You
do
don't
I
want
do.
FAU?
You always disagree.
No,
So what do you want?
I don't like FAU because they broke my heart and they broke my heart against Memphis. Memphis should have been in the Sweet 16, and it was a bad ref call as the reason why they're here. I'm kidding,
They won
kind of,
another game,
sort of.
by the way. So.
They
You're not
won.
exactly right, but they did keep winning.
They did keep winning, so that's fine. But the team I really, other than UConn, the team I really want to win is Miami. I love Isaiah Wong. I've loved him all season long. I've been watching
Do you
him.
like his Wong?
I do like his Wong. His Wong is really good, if you know what I
Oh,
mean.
It's not as good as
Jesus.
Jaden Wong.
Well, that's
No, but Isaiah Wong has been so much fun to watch all year long. Miami has been fun to bet for too. So, I really like Miami. So that's why I'm really cheering for them. If it's not UConn, I'm cheering for Miami.
okay. Fair enough. Steve, any disagreements? Who do you want to win? So,
I'm still salty that Oral Roberts is not in the final. I believe my like bracket is ranked like in the bottom couple million, something like that, in the country.
our
So-
group bracket
Aren't you
is pretty solid. In fact, I'm gonna look where we essentially ended at because we're if
It's
UConn
over.
wins. Well, the group bracket already won, which is why I say that we all won, which is facts. We did all win.
You're welcome for that because I helped convince us to actually have
Don't just
UConn in the
say
final.
hope convinced. We are in the top 100% in the group.
You
bracket.
literally said you didn't want UConn that.
I didn't because it's boring. This bracket is ranked 64,000th. The group bracket. If UConn
That's pretty
wins,
good.
I'm sure it'll be top 20,000.
I'm very curious what I am.
Riley's bracket, which was the worst, is 19.7 million. I mean to say the worst in a negative way. 19.7 million.
Wow.
I'm
uh,
494th.
if-
College show
gives you-
Riley that.
If
I
that
will.
gives you any, you said what was your thing?
494K.
Oh,
And
this
that
is
wa- wasn't-
64K. That's
It's only-
crazy. This group.
Yeah,
bracket
and there's
goes
only a
crazy.
60-point difference. That's crazy.
So yeah,
Guys, do not
this
wor-
group bracket goes crazy. So.
Or 80
Okay. Anyways, so that was that. Let's talk. We'll save the other thing that I sent Austin for another day if we ever decide we want to do it.
Yep.
Let's talk briefly about some of the other stuff going on. There's really not a lot. The Bruins this week officially clinched the division.
They have the most wins now in their history, right?
They are
One
currently
away.
tied. So
Oh,
they're
okay.
playing right
One away.
now against the Predators. It is tied after.
Are they
one.
up?
It is-
Shout out.
yep.
Shout out to the Bruins. So really quick, if you guys didn't hear about the school shooting that was in Nashville yesterday, the Bruins as an organization came together with the Predators, and they are wearing the school's logo on their helmets for tonight's
That's awesome.
game.
I
Yep.
did not know
So-
that, but that's amazing.
Both organizations are doing that for tonight's game, so I think that's really awesome because I think it's in Nashville.
It is. It is.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's
it is.
awesome.
Actually, I lied. It's in Boston, but point being,
okay.
it's still
So yeah, that is really cool.
It is tippable. So I present. So they were the first team to clinch. They were the first team to clinch the playoffs 2 weeks ago. Now, by the way, they clinched the playoff on March 7th. It is now March 28th.
Is that the soonest it's ever been
No,
clinched? or-
No.
okay.
So
there's a better team than them out there? That's crazy.
Not by
right about
many.
the same. It's actually right
It's
about
not
the
by
same.
many.
Their
Mhm.
record now, there's 9 game left. They need to go. I was wrong about this. I've been saying 7-2. It's actually 6-3 to tie the best the best record of all time. So the best
Is that to
Ooh.
tie it or break it?
to tie, I think is. The
Okay, so to
Well,
break
have,
So
it,
who
you're
they
has
not
the
wrong.
best?
actually they have 119 points, most points in NHL season team history.
120 something, isn't it? 129.
132 by the Canadians.
132.
And 76. So yeah, that's the comparable team. So they
Is that the team that had the best record too?
Yeah.
Yes. So they actually. So it is 7-2. I was right because 7 would give them 14 points, which would put them at 133, which would beat them by 1 point exactly. So and the more they win, as they're on a 7-game win streak, makes that more and more feasible. Like if they just continue to win a couple more games, it's 5-2, it's 4-2. Like it just feels more realistic. So on top of that, that's kind of not really news because they've just been doing that all season. Their point differential is up to 118. The Maple Leafs clinched the playoffs. Not only did they clinch the playoffs, I'm gonna get there. Not only did they
They're
clinch
less
the
important.
playoffs, The Maple Leafs will officially have will officially be one of the top 3 seeds in the division. Already kind of a given, considering it's pretty likely they're going to play the Lightning anyways, unless the Lightning continue to lose 4 in a row. If the Panthers won their last 4 games, they would actually be 3 points behind the Lightning for the 3rd seed right now, but instead they have lost their last 4 as well and are 11 points behind still.
Panthers are blowing it.
Yes,
Like hardcore.
They had
the Panthers,
an actual chance to not only be a wild card, but have a chance at being a number 3 in the division. So
they might not even make the playoffs
yes.
now.
Now on the other side of the East, the Hurricanes clinched they clinched the playoffs I think they've clinched a non-wild card.
Yes.
They've clinched a non-wild card, and the Devils have clinched a non-wild card. So they'll be at least the top 3 seeds. The Rangers are 2 games out. 2 games out from clinching a non-wild card. They're on a 2-game win streak. That's likely to do it, but they have clinched playoffs. So all 3 of them clinched playoffs. The Lightning could still fall out of the playoffs if the Panthers pull their head of their ass, and then the Islanders and Penguins continue to play okay. Over on the west side of things, not a single team's clinched the playoffs, so that makes that really easy. It's really crazy that the Bruins clinched the playoffs 8 days into March, and we're now going into April, and there's not a single Western Conference team that's clinched. That's just insanity.
The West has just been not
mediocre.
good this year.
So that's it for the NHL side of things.
Really quick, while we're still on hockey, the NCAA hockey tournament kicked off this past weekend, and we do have the Frozen Four, which are playing on April 6th in Tampa, and those are University of Minnesota, Boston University, University of Michigan, and Quinnipiac University.
Michigan.
Did UNH make it to the tournament?
No.
They
hosted a game.
So
good for them.
Here's the short version of this right now. Michigan has 2 of the top 5 picks in this year's draft, and I think like 3 or 4 of the top 10.
Last year's draft.
Of last year's draft, thank you. And they're just absolutely disgusting. So Michigan
and yet
should
they're
win.
Still not the favorite. Minnesota is,
which is so weird. Like Michigan should win this without even
I agree.
hesitation. However, go BU. They're playing really well this year. It's first time made the final or the Frozen Four in a long time. So
2 years since Jack Eichel.
Yeah, which was a long time ago. It's a whole franchise and a half for him ago.
9 years ago. 9 years ago.
Anyways, so that's going cool. Touch briefly on the NBA. The Bucks, the Celtics, 76ers, and Cavaliers have all clinched a playoff spot. Celtics are 2 games behind the first seed. The 76ers have gone on a skid while the Celtics have started to win. Celtics are going to continue to fight for that first seed. Only 2 games behind. They actually play the Bucks on Thursday. If they can win this game tonight, the Bucks lose that game. That game's still important regardless. Celtics are currently losing right now. On the Western side of things, only 2 teams have clinched, both the Nuggets and the Grizzlies. It gets a lot closer on the bottom side for them. So, and the Knicks have started to kind of lose a little bit.
Kind of crumble, they're kind of crumbling.
I mean, like they should.
Yeah, they still have.
Weren't the Knicks within like 1 or 2 games of
yes.
The Celtics?
They were.
They were within a few games of Celtics, and now they are
9
games behind.
9.5.
Jeez.
Again, Celtics have kind of pulled it back a bit. The
Celtics have looked dominant again over the last couple.
The Celtics had a really good win against the Kings.
Well,
no, was it the Kings?
No, they beat the Kings.
Yeah,
They beat the Pacers, and they beat the Spurs all by 20.
And the fact is, the Kings are an actual team right now. It's not like they beat the Kings. It's like no, they're
losing to the Wizards right now, who are not an actual team, so it doesn't.
Really matter. Whatever.
Anyway,
I mean, every NBA playoff team lays an egg at some point. Granted, I mean, they are not shooting super great tonight.
They can't really afford to lay an egg right now, and they're trying to catch Milwaukee, and they play them on Thursday, so that's not really an option.
Hey, considering that they Milwaukee, it was like in overtime, and they were missing 3 or 4 starters.
But they still need to win that game to tie the series for the season to have any chance at still getting the first.
Yeah,
this is
they only have 6 games after tonight, so they really need to win this one.
It's a must win.
Yes, they do.
So anyways, that's what's going on in the world. A little bit of Boston news as well. Anyone else have anything else they wanted to talk about today?
With Lamar Jackson wanting a ton of money, I mean, I've started giving more thought of, the possibility of him coming to the Patriots. The only downside is 2 first-round picks and $230 million guaranteed is quite a bit for a running quarterback.
worth it. I'm choosing to not talk about this because I think in the next week the Patriots are going to do something. I think they're either going to get
Yes.
D-Hop or the Lamar. So I'm going to wait until next week for us to talk about it.
I think if they get D-Hop, then we might be looking at Lamar. Maybe we'll see.
No,
I think it's
not
interesting.
no. If we're getting D-Hop, we're not picking up Lamar.
I think that's fair. I think it's a one or the other. I think that Lamar with this offense is deep playoffable. I don't know if Mac with this offense is able to go deep playoffs, but with D-Hop, it's significantly better. So we'll see.
Well, also the Patriots can. I mean, D-Hop's and his agent can now talk to teams, so there's a chance, depending on the team he can talk to, he can actually look into restructuring his future contract for an extension, or being able to maybe reduce his salary so that the Cardinals are more likely to pick up some of that, so that then teams will actually trade for it.
We shall
But
see.
yeah,
I'm choosing to not talk about it much, but anything else from anyone else as we wait another week before we see if anything happens?
No, I think we'll just see.
Awesome. Well, this was
Oh,
episode...
opening day is this Thursday.
Yes, opening day is this Thursday. I will be having the Red Sox on the TV behind me, watching them play. I think they play at like 1 o'clock or something like that. It's going to be a good time. The Red Sox have looked not as they started off really, really hot in spring training. They've looked decent since about 500 baseballs since they started off 10-0. So the Yankees have
spring
not
training.
looked ideal.
Spring train.
I
Spring
agree.
training means
I
nothing.
agree. It is spring
Spring
training. However, the Red Sox have been hitting
Oh.
really well. So we'll see.
We shall see.
The
First couple
pro-
weeks
the
tells a
problem
lot.
is, it does. It really does. If I've noticed anything, like seeing a team start off bad, it can switch, but it feels so hard in baseball. So, anyways, that was episode 57. We do appreciate you guys for taking the time to sit with us tonight, or taking the time to listen, whether it be on Spotify or Apple Podcast, or just on YouTube. We do appreciate you, and we appreciate your beautiful faces while you look at ours. We do hope you guys have a great week. Make sure to check out the Twitter as we have daily polls. Make sure to check out the Instagram as we are restarting our somewhat frequent trivia whenever we can get that done. Definitely make sure to go follow those as we do keep you update on all the news. We hope you have a go ahead, Kyle, before I end it.
And keep an eye out on TikTok, as we do have one up and coming as well.
Yes, there will be TikTok. We'll see how many we can pull from this episode, but especially future episodes we will be posting. So I hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you next week.